some of the best practices to make your arrival at Camp Sequassen easy and not a problem for your troop or for an individual. Best practices for troops is really to make sure you have one person that is responsible for all of the medical paperwork and that all of the paperwork comes together and that it's complete. If you're a provisional, please make sure that you include a contact person, whether it's a parent or somebody that if there's any problems with the health forms, that I can contact you to get clarification and make sure that things are done correctly. If the troop is sending it as a packet together, that works really well because of the fact that I have a roster of who is coming as a troop, and then that troop is checked in and they're all reviewed, and we're looking for if there's any issues that we need to be prepared for as the campers and the adults come into camp. And if it's a provisional, we also have a roster for you as well to make sure that we actually do have your paperwork. If you are a provisional that is doing more than 1 week, it is always better to make sure that you actually submit for that week, even if it is an extra piece of paperwork, just because unless I'm told on the Saturday of checkout that I don't move those files forward. They just go into a collective folder, and then it becomes a lengthy process to try and chase them down later on. We do not hold on to your physicals. At the end of the week, we look to return them back to the troop or to the individual. Again, if they leave my hands, I can't guarantee that I'm going to have them 2 weeks later if you come back as a provisional. The health form this year is, again, the same health form that we've been using for the past couple of years, which I guess is good news. So there's not a lot of changes for those of you who have dealt with it before. It's the same form, but there are, again, some areas that I want to highlight to make sure that you understand that we need to have it. The first one, of course, is the A, and I need to also really highlight the fact that physicals completed all the pages for everybody, scouts, scouters, youth, adult, they all need to be done. The only reason that you would not need a physical is if you are in camp for 23 hours or less, and that's a 1 day only. It can't be an accumulation of if I come on Monday and I come on Wednesday and it's only 22 hours, it's good. No, 1 day, 23 hours max. If you're going to be there Monday and Wednesday, you need to have a physical on record. So starting with the A form, it's basically the information form for you to be in camp, to follow the rules, be involved in stuff, and that needs to be signed by the participant and the parent or the guardian. If you're an adult, of course, you are the participant. If you're a scout or youth, then you need to have a parent or guardian sign it. At the bottom of the A form, there's a section that says who is allowed to pick up scout. That needs to be completed for if it's the parent or guardian or some other relative that's picking up somebody. And it should also include a scoutmaster or adult from the troop that if for some reason the scout has to be transported, that there actually is permission for that scout to be transported by an adult from the troop. The bottom or the last section on the A form is actually those that are not allowed to pick up or should have no contact with a scout at camp. And that's important for us to have. So please do not confuse that with that is an area that you can let people pick up, but only if they are not allowed to pick up. It saves on the hassle for checkout if a scout leaves early during the week. The B page is actually kind of a background information page. The top part of it is basically listing the information, and more importantly, it's the health insurance form that if the scout needs to go out for medical care, that's available to the medical provider, as well as the fact that in the middle section there, before it gets into the bottom history, is the section of who we need to contact if we can't get a hold of the parent or guardian that can kind of be stand-in until we're able to chase down that parent or guardian. The bottom part of the B1 is the health history. That needs to be completed. It's not a pick and choose, check off what you know. It's actually yes or no for everything. If it's a male scout, then yes, there are some things that don't apply to a male scout. And some things may not apply if they don't have cardiac problems or whatever, but it still needs to be marked with a yes or a no. The B2 form is actually the allergy starts it off, and that starts off with a metered dose inhaler if they have one, as well as an EpiPen for an anaphylactic reaction. We need to know that those are actually in date and active for use if we have to. And right underneath that, it lists any and all possible allergies, whether it's plant, insect, food, medication, that needs to be completed. The next section below that is medication. If the scout or scouter is on a prescribed medication, that needs to be filled out. And I will talk later on about our over-the-counter medications, but if there's a difference from what our over-the-counter medications are, your medical provider would need to fill that out for the scout, the youth, so that that can be administered, as well as you would need to provide that as a parent or guardian. With our youth, especially in Connecticut, it's a double signature. The medical provider needs to sign it on the left-hand side, and the parent or guardian signs it on the right-hand side, giving permission for that medication to be given. And the bottom of the B2 is actually the immunization history. In Connecticut, that needs to be completed. It needs to be completed with dates. So, and it only needs to be the last date given. You don't have to give me all of the dates of every immunization given, but just the last date of administration of that immunization. In Connecticut currently, there still are some immunizations that are contraindicated for medical reasons or because of a religious exemption. There is a specific form that needs to be completed for a religious exemption. And in the sideline and forms that you can upload from the Connecticut site is actually that religious exemption statement form. It is a 2-page form and needs to be completed by some legal authority that says yes, that they can do it. It's not just a parent say, oh, we're not doing it. It has to have some backing, whether or not that's from a judge, a notary public, or something of that nature. If it's a medical exemption, then your medical provider would be the one that completes that form. Then we go on to the C part of the physical form, and that is the actual physical. That's the backbone. That's the big thing that needs to be completed. And on the first part of that is actually the permission to be involved. That's filled out by the medical provider. A medical provider can be a doctor, a nurse practitioner, a physician's assistant. It is not a nurse. It is not a medical assistant. It is not the office manager. It needs to be a licensed medical provider, either a doctor, a nurse practitioner, or a physician's assistant. As you move down the form, there also is a space for vital signs for respirations, pulse, and that type of stuff. On the left-hand side is the actual physical. That needs to be completed by your medical provider. The other part on the right-hand side is the examiner's certificate. This is where it gets really tricky because of the fact it has to be signed by the medical provider, not stamped, but signed, and then dated for the date of which it's being signed. I also point out that it can be confusing for the medical provider for what it states, and there's a true false. That if they put down false, it actually means no, which then can cause problems because it means they do have that problem. So please make sure that your medical provider is the one that understands that. Otherwise, the form is returned because of the fact it's assumed that the scout or scouter has those problems. For instance, also, if it's an orthopedic issue, it talks about a time period. So if Johnny Scout or Sally Scout had a broken arm 3 months ago and they check that, they need to have an orthopedic clearance in order to come into camp, proving that they have been cleared to be involved in the activities. So again, that's the examiner certification on the right hand on the right hand side. I really kind of recommend that you walk in with that form in your hand and shove it directly under the medical provider's face and have them fill it out right in front of you so that you walk out of their office with it. Because giving it to the office, having the office then get it to it and get it from them 2 weeks later sometimes can cause other problems that actually happen in one, a timely one, as well as the fact of it being filled out correctly. The next form that Connecticut Yankee has is actually the over-the-counter form. We do have a camp physician on our staff that we work with, and he and their practice have agreed to certain medications that we keep in stock available to scouts and scouters that they can take 1 or 2 doses. They cannot take it all week long. So if you're thinking that they can take that antihistamine for the entire week, no, it can't happen that way. It's just 1 or 2 doses. If it is something you do not want given, you can cross out through it and, initial it saying, no, you don't want that given to your scout, but you cannot substitute with anything so that you have something else to put in place of. It's only what we have in stock. You can cross out, but you cannot add. As I mentioned before, there are medications are handled through the health office. All of those medications, whether it be for adult or for youth, go through the health office. By the state of Connecticut and legal restrictions as well as the orders, I have to follow that, and I administer the medications to the youth at assigned times or as needed if they come to the health office. For adults, I hold onto the medication, but they will self-administer it at assigned times, and the medication is made available to them, and they actually are, quote unquote, the ones that will give it to themselves, but I have to hold on to it. It's a safety measure, and it helps us to have a camp that's safe for not only our youth and adults, but also for our animals and other life things that are going on within the camp. Other forms that we will need, the state of Connecticut expects that we will have what's called action plans, or plans that in case of an emergency, we follow what the medical provider wants us to do. These forms are available on our website. The forms that are available are labeled under Asthma Action Plan. There is both an English form and a Spanish form of that. There is a food allergy and an anaphylaxis emergency care plan. There is a seizure care plan. There is a generic care plan if there for some reason is something that we don't have on our thing. And then there's also something called the diabetic care plan. That one is not on our website because that's a much more involved care plan, and that one actually is run through the endocrinologist for the actual scout that would have that problem. And that's, like I said, a much more involved plan, so that would come from them. So overall, I already talked about medications, and the last thing I would say about medications also is there are emergency medications. Those are available to be self-carried. There is a self-carry form that needs to be completed by your medical provider. These are emergency medications that are life-saving medications, such as an EpiPen or for anaphylaxis, an asthma meter dose inhaler for instant care for shortness of breath, cardiac drugs. Those are the emergency medications that we're talking about. Other medications like other things for asthma that are spread out and given twice a day, or other medications that can wait to be given through the health lodge, those are ones that are not emergency medications. So only ones that are immediate life-saving medications. I certainly hope that this has been informative, and I certainly hope that this can help you have a smooth transition into the summer. My purpose is not to be the detective trying to figure out why, what, and where. It's just much easier when the forms are complete, done correctly, and then they fly through and you get into camp. You don't have to wait online, and it just makes it much more fun for the scouts and scouters. Medications, like I said, are turned in. They are expected to be turned in to the health lodge on Sunday afternoon on arrival to camp. Again, as was mentioned in the beginning, life is a lot easier and a lot smoother if there's actually a designated medical head person that knows kind of what's going on with the scouts and what to anticipate, as well as if they're paying attention to the med form so that they can say, this is going to be a problem. Please make sure you get this corrected, rather than sending incomplete forms to camp. Again, if for some reason you do have any kind of questions, I would encourage you please to go ahead and send me an email. I'm pretty good at responding to those in a fairly quick fashion so that I can hopefully make it easier, as well as I'd rather answer the questions before than after or when you're actually at camp that week. So again, thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing you this summer. Stay warm till then, and hopefully summer will come upon us quickly and soon.
Thank you, Nurse Dave, for all that very vital information about the health forms. Again, as a reminder, for you unit leaders, unit coordinators who coordinate the summer camp experience, make sure you collect all of those forms from your youth, from your scouts, and then get them in by your pre-camp leaders meeting so that we up at camp can go through them, make sure they're good to go, so that your scout can enjoy all the fun at camp the moment they arrive for their week at camp.